We're back here on the platform this evening, and we are speaking with Drexel Deal today, and we are talking about his life that was wrapped up in crime. And I must say that this book that I'm holding in my hand should be required reading by our policymakers, teachers, law enforcement officials, indeed parents, so that they would know the pitfalls to avoid for young men and women in our country. Drexel, you, as I looked through this book a couple of days ago, when you presented it to me, I was fascinated by some of the things that you wrote in this book. And what fascinated me is that you called Fox Hill Prison the University of Yamacraw.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that it is not rehabilitating people as it should.
No, because we focus more on warehousing human beings. We don't focus on, like you indicated, restorative justice, so to speak. You steal something and you are found guilty, they warehouse you in prison. All they're basically doing is creating a smarter criminal.
And that is going on today.
It's going on today. Rather than you steal something, okay, what you stole was valued at $300, you will wait to pay Mr. Jones back what you stole from him, plus the court time.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole lot more better.
Yes. But today, you are sent to prison, you are mixing and meddling with other criminally minded people,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trading stories, and you come out, as you say in your book, you become a monster.
It's correct. And when I say become a monster, when I left prison for the second time, not only, first of all, when I went back to prison, I did a bold and daring shooting. I shot a security guard in the Mall of Marathon. And when I came out of prison this time, now I knew not only that I had the nerve to pull the trigger, but I also had the ability that when I committed a crime, that I wouldn't leave no evidence behind. That to me is what is a monster.
Mm. You became a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And in the radio interview, you said you did some of these things not because you needed the money, but for the thrill of it.
Yes, for the thrill. I never used to drink. I was one who never used to smoke dope or any sort of drugs. But what got me high, sad to say, was violence. I used to get a kick out of when I fire my weapon, and I always use semi-automatic weapons, which means each time I pull the trigger, the gun would automatically eject an empty shell onto the ground. And just the sound of that used to send me in a trance.
Is that right?
Yes. And the smell of burnt gunpowder.
You got a high from that?
A high from it.
You should have been dead. You have a chapter 8, I think, in the book, about a close call.
Mm-hmm.
You should have been dead. You should have been in the graveyard.
Most
based
definitely.
on your behavior.
Yes. Not just my behavior. Mr. Jones, when I look back at the book that I wrote, I was able to count something like 12 close encounters with death. 12 close encounters with death. And it started from when I was at the age of 5 with my father in that regards. And so I know that the life, me being alive today, is nothing, I'm not lucky. I'm just fortunate that God chose to spare me.
And he spared you for a purpose, to tell the story and to educate others, I believe.
Most definitely. Because see, when I was going through my quiet rebellion, so to speak, I remember the assistant pastor of our church making an attempt to reach out to me, and he sat down and he began to share his life story. Let me just say, that was the first time that he had my undivided attention. We witness best to others when we share our own personal stories. And when I left that meeting, I left the meeting shaking my head, realizing that what he been through, I was not going through. And I said to myself, he just don't know what it is I'm going through. He just don't know. I needed someone who had been in my, who had been through my situation, who was familiar with the unfamiliar terrain that I was on, to quote unquote guide me back, or to cast down a rope for me to pull myself out.
I have offered that many of the criminals in our country are victims themselves, victims of a poor environment, dysfunctional homes, that they are victims of the society.
Neglect.
Yes, we have neglected to do some things as members of society. Do you feel that you are a victim or otherwise?
Well, you know, Mr. Jones, I don't feel that I was a victim, because a lot of decisions I made, I knew right from wrong, but I just got caught up in a particular mindset. You see, when you allow a young man to go just to linger, and you don't make no attempt to reach out to him. As a matter of fact, even scriptures in Proverbs chapter 24, verse 11, it says, hold back the young one heading towards slaughter.
And that is why you're a victim. Because society didn't have the, to use your word, the intervention for you. Society didn't intervene and had programs to snatch you from where you were.
And I guess when you put it like that, but you know, so interesting, Mr. Jones. What you're saying, you're quite right, because even the leader of the rebellions, this individual I keep referring to, Scrooge, he said, if you can structure the young men, you can control them. That's all the gangs brought to the community, structure. In my interview with Vicente Roberts, a counseling psychologist and a lecturer at the College of the Bahamas, he said, what a father brings to the home is structure. And so when the father isn't there, the gang subculture takes control.
And that is pretty much what we need in our society.
Structure.
A structured program by the policymakers, by the government, a structured program by the people in civil society, including churches. And if we had structured programs, then we wouldn't have the level of crime and violence we have in the society.
You're absolutely correct. But here's what's the sad part. In my interview with these individuals, the rebellions, the leader said, you know what, we got to know the fellas in Hay Street, the fellas in Mason Sedition, by fighting. That's how we got to know those individuals. Couldn't that been accomplished through sports? Some sort of structured activity? LeBron James said sports was his way out, away from a life of drugs, away from a life of crime. It was sports.
But yet today, you were operating in the 80s and the 90s, weren't you?
In the early 90s.
In the early 90s?
Yes.
So I spoke with LeVon Bannister on another radio program, and he said that you were junior to him. He was a part of Rebellion as well. So you were in the minor leagues in Rebellion when he was in the major leagues.
But
you became a major league criminal.
Yeah, Mr. Bannister was older than I was, but he was a newcomer to the Rebellions because he was a part of the Nassau Village crew, and they came into the Rebellions, quote unquote, after me, so to speak. But I often say this to the individual, it's the young fella who was more to prove. I always knew that I was going to get gunned down. I always had envisioned myself being gunned down by someone younger than me who has more to prove.
Drexel Deal, I believe that a whole lot of criminals in our country today, as I said at the opening of the program, they don't fear dying. But beyond that, they do not respect life, the sanctity of life. That life itself is sacred. You had, at that time, you had no regard for the sanctity of life, did you?
No. Like if I don't have no regard for my life, it make you think I'm going to have regard for your life. And even Scripture tells us to appreciate, love thy neighbor as well as thyself. But if I don't feel nothing for me and my future, what makes your future so special? And you know something, what's so sad, Mr. Jones? In the weapons that I ordered to be confiscated, in the process of them confiscating the weapons, I was not there. But a young man was shot and killed, the individual who bought the weapons over. I had sent 2 individuals to collect the shipment. And one of the individuals grew up with his father. And when I got to where they were with all the guns, the individual who grew up with his father, he was crying. The individual who had shot the young man, he was walking around with 2 guns in both pockets, ready for another one. And even though I understood why he was crying, I didn't feel what he felt. See, he had a connection to humanity that he got from his father. Me and the other individual who grew up without fathers, we felt nothing.
You were numbed.
Numbed. And there's a lady who wrote a book, Rebecca Rawback. She wrote a book, Parents of Prison, and she indicated individuals who are cold, remorseless, they have no connection at all to humanity. None whatsoever.
Isn't that pretty much what is happening in our country today, Mr. Deal, when you see the regularity of the homicides that we have? We have over 100 plus now, 100 plus every year. Isn't it because the criminals are unfeeling and they have no respect for life?
Yes, correct. So as I indicated to you, they have no respect for life because they don't respect their own life. I always knew that I was going to get gunned at, and I had a game plan. And my thing was, whenever I'm shot up and lying on the ground, I just wanted to have enough breath left for me to ask the good Lord for forgiveness and slip quietly into heaven. That was my game plan.
And you thought that that would do it?
Yeah, I didn't. I mean,
where you get that notion from that you can do whatever you want to do, and if you just happen to be shot and killed, that you can just call on the name of the Lord and you go to heaven. Yeah. Where you got that?
Well, they say Scriptures help us to appreciate. I mean, if you confess your sin, He is faithful and just to forgive us of our sins. So I figured if I'm on my way out, why not let me ask the good Lord for forgiveness, and I'd be able to slip right into heaven.
That would have done the job for you.
That would have done the job for me. That was my game plan. I also had a passport under a different name just in case I had to skip town. And so because I knew that I was not going to live long, I devised a game plan. This is what I'm going to do in the event this should happen.
We now have to use your book to disabuse young men of that mentality. Because that's a mental frame that you had.
It's a mindset.
It's a mindset. Mm-hmm. What are you doing to change that mindset in your blindness and with your book?
Well, for the past 10 years, I've been reaching out, doing various different speaking engagement to schools. I'm involved in ministry where I go door to door, and ironically, it's in going door to door that I constantly run across individuals who had that same anger that I had. I quote 2 individuals in the book, individuals I just ran into on the streets, and sharing the good news with them. And one individual I grew up hearing about. He was, I believe, like 7 years. You hear the name Papa, often called the radio talk show, right? Mm-hmm. Papa got lost his sight on the back of his motorbike. He got shot in his eyes.
Okay.
This individual, he said it's okay for me to quote him. His name was Marty Bullitt. He's a senior man. When he was a senior, he was known as a fist of one of the big-time drug dealers back in the day. But in speaking with him, his father raped, quote unquote, his mother when she was 13. His father was 68. 68. And he never understood why nothing was done to his father. His father was a school teacher. He said his father, when his mother was 13, his father had grandchildren older than his mother. And in talking with him, he's like probably 46, 47, and you can still hear the anger resonate deep within.
Drexel Deal, is this a sick society?
We have some people like to say you cannot legislate morality because we want to live our life as we want to. But when you look at God laws or the laws we have on the book, they all come from the Bible.
No, you see, it is said that crime is the fever chart of a sick society. And depending on the level of criminality or the number of homicides that you have, you can tell just how sick the society is.
We have a serious issue that needs to be dealt with, and it's a moral issue. When you have a society where some 72 or 78% of children are being born outside of wedlock each year, that's a problem. That's the breeding ground for criminality.
We are producing them, as I said, as if we are producing, as if it is an assembly line of criminals coming out on a yearly basis.
It's correct. And as a small country, we don't have the resources. We will never have the resources to fight such a thing.
Let me ask you a question that I asked on radio. Do you think our policy makers get it? Do you think that they understand what is happening?
I don't think they do. I don't think they do. Their actions speak louder than words. Everyone simply believes if you give the police more arms, you give them more vehicles, maybe we could win this battle on crime. But no, this is a social issue that needs social intervention. Where's the Ministry of Family Affairs? Mm-hmm. There's nothing addressing this issue. Nothing at all. But we simply believe if we can put several more nines in the police arm or give them AK-47 to rival that what's on the streets, it doesn't work.
But based on what I'm hearing, the police are outgunned because you can get a gun very easily. And if you say that there are thousands of young men in particular who are members of gangs, and they are able to get guns and create the mayhem in the society, the police is fighting a war that they simply cannot win.
They're fighting an uphill battle. And let me just say in terms of the quality, the kind of the guns that is on the streets. Mr. Jones, when at the age of 17, I was arrested with a .44 revolver. That's one of the most powerful handguns in the world. And I was in CID wondering why every time a CID comes, he was calling my name. Just wanted to see my face. And the thing that was so interesting about this weapon was not the fact that it was a 4.4, it was the model that it was. I got locked up in 1993 with this 4.4. The weapon was a 1992 model. So just several months after its release in the US, it was already on the streets in the hands of individuals who were on the wrong side of the law.
But you ordered this? This is one of the weapons that your man brought in earlier?
No, just before I was 17.
Oh, you were 17?
17. This was, quote unquote, the leader of the rebellion's gun.
Okay.
That was his prize.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave it to you? You bought it from him?
I borrowed it from him.
You borrowed it?
Yeah, once you've already proven that you could pull the trigger, it's amazing how the leaders think. They think nothing but putting a gun in your hand because they know once you have a gun in your hand, you will always make the gang look good.
But the gangs today are motivated by different things, I am told.
Yes.
They are selling drugs. You weren't selling drugs, were you?
No. Back in those days, when we were around, it was just a lot of youthful mischief. Yes, we had the guns and so forth, but today you're talking about it's gangs, organized crime.
So we have organized crime in New Providence today? Yes,
it's organized crime. And that's why the crime...
Turf wars.
Because I want your spot. Or you stole 3 pounds of weed from me. And because drug dealers always have to use force. Because they can't have the word going around, you stole 3 pounds of weed from the fella and nothing happened. You become a runaway, then everyone wants to steal your dope.
Mm. And so you have a guy who runs Nassau Village who doesn't want anyone from Pinewood to be trading in Nassau Village. That is pretty much what a turf war is all about.
It's correct. But no, you know what's so sad? When the gangs were around, the whole of Nassau Village was together. When E Street was around, I mean the rebellion was around, the whole, like you talk about 10 blocks on E Street was together. But now what do you have, Mr. Jones? You have every little fort corner fighting with each other.
Are these young men who are part of these gangs, do they suffer from low self-esteem?
When you look at it, a lot of them didn't do well in school for some reason or another. And so it becomes easier to, and then you're talking about they are being recognized, getting the acceptance and approval that they didn't get in school, they're getting it on the streets and so forth. And so you, and the more you participate in crime, you learn. I mean, it's human nature. Repetition is the mother of skills, and so the more I do something, the better I get. Yeah.
And just before we go to a break, I want to talk about these guns again and how they get into the country. Because if we are able to interdict these weapons, then we can probably reduce the amount of homicides that we have. You said to me on a previous program that they come in Tide boxes and all the detergent boxes, eh?
Right now, yes, that was the small way of bringing it in, but like
then.
Okay. Every time a shipment, as I was reliably informed, every time a shipment of weed lands in, a shipment of guns come in as well to protect that.
But how?
Mr. Jones, the United States has a role to play. They spend $50 billion each year trying to interdict drugs, and they're failing. But before I lost my sight, in 1996, when I took the shipment of guns, the individual was telling me, we purchase our weapons out of the pawn shop. Mm-hmm. There was a report that was released on last year, it's July the 13th to be exact. I can't remember the exact report, but it was done by an independent think tank. And they said that because of the lax gun laws in the United States, individuals can still go to pawn shops, flea markets, gun shows, and purchase these weapons, and they find themselves in the Caribbean and Mexico. 90% of the guns that are confiscated off the streets of the Bahamas are purchased legally in the U.S.
And we need to trace them. Let's take a break here on the program, and we are speaking with Drexel Deal. We'll come right back.